Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Life-Changing True Stories. Today, I bring you a powerful and deeply loving story. The grand ballroom of the Meridian Hotel sparkled like a constellation brought down to earth. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across marble floors while the elite of the business world mingled beneath their glittering light. Sofia Ramirez adjusted the deep emerald silk of her dress and tried not to feel out of place among the billionaires and corporate titans surrounding her. She had not wanted to come tonight. Charity galas filled with wealthy people showing off their donations had never been her scene. But Diego Morales, her colleague from the art gallery, had insisted. He needed a date for this particular event, and somehow his enthusiasm had worn down her resistance. Now, standing in this sea of designer gowns and tailored suits, she wondered if she had made a mistake. Diego appeared at her elbow with 2 glasses of champagne, his easy smile lighting up his handsome face. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his tuxedo fit him like it had been painted on. He handed her a glass and clinked his against hers. "Stop looking so nervous," he said with a laugh. "You belong here as much as anyone else." Sofia took a sip of the expensive champagne and raised an eyebrow. "Diego, I curate art for small galleries. These people buy entire museums before breakfast. And they have terrible taste most of the time," Diego replied, winking at her. "Trust me, you are far more interesting than half the people in this room." Across the ballroom, Julian Blackwood stood in a circle of executives discussing the latest market trends. He nodded at appropriate moments and made the expected comments, but his attention had been captured by something else entirely. Someone else entirely. The woman in the emerald dress had walked in 15 minutes ago, and Julian had not been able to look away since. There was something about the way she moved, the way she held herself. She did not glide through the room like she owned it the way most people here did. Instead, she seemed to observe everything with curious, intelligent eyes. She looked real in a room full of carefully constructed facades. Catherine Winters, his business associate, noticed his distraction and followed his gaze. "Julian, are you even listening to Robert's proposal?" Julian blinked and turned his attention back to the conversation, but his mind kept drifting. Who was she? And why did she seem so comfortable with that man who kept touching her arm and making her laugh? "Excuse me?" Julian said abruptly, cutting off someone mid-sentence. "I need to make a call."
Ow.
He did not need to make a call. What he needed was to get closer to the woman in emerald before this irrational feeling consuming him drove him completely mad. Julian Blackwood did not do irrational. He built billion-dollar companies through logic and strategy. He never let emotions cloud his judgment. Yet here he was, crossing the ballroom like a man possessed, drawn to a stranger. Sofia was listening to Diego tell an animated story about a disastrous exhibition opening when she felt it. That peculiar sensation of being watched. She glanced up, and her breath caught in her throat. A man was looking directly at her from across the room, and the intensity in his gaze made her skin tingle. He was tall, perhaps 6 feet, with dark hair that was slightly too long for the corporate world he clearly inhabited. His jaw was strong, his features sharp and aristocratic, but it was his eyes that held her captive. They were a striking gray like storm clouds, and they were fixed on her with an expression she could not quite read. "Who is that?" Sofia asked Diego quietly, nodding slightly in the man's direction. Diego followed her gaze, and his eyebrows shot up. "That is Julian Blackwood." "The Julian Blackwood." "He owns Blackwood Technologies. The man is worth about $20 billion, give or take a few $100 million. Sofia felt her stomach flip. Of course he was a billionaire, and of course he was looking at her like that. Rich men always thought they could have whatever they wanted. "He looks angry," Sofia observed, watching as Julian began walking toward them with purposeful strides. "He looks intense," Diego corrected. "That is just his face. I have seen him in interviews." The man does not know how to smile. But Diego is wrong. Julian was angry, though he could not quite explain why. The sight of this unknown woman laughing at another man's jokes, letting him stand so close, touching her arm so familiarly, it made something dark and possessive rise up in Julian's chest. It made no sense. He did not know her. He had no claim on her. Yet the jealousy burning through him was undeniable. Julian reached them just as Diego was launching into another story. Up close, the woman was even more beautiful than he had realized. Her skin was golden and smooth, her dark hair falling in soft waves past her shoulders. Her eyes were the color of warm honey, intelligent and alert. She looked up at him with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. "Good evening," Julian said, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. "I am Julian Blackwood." Diego's eyes widened slightly, but he recovered quickly, extending his hand. "Diego Morales. This is my colleague, Sofia Ramirez. We work together at the Castellano Gallery." Sofia shook Julian's offered hand, and the touch sent electricity racing up her arm. She pulled away quickly, unsettled by her reaction. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Blackwood." "Julian, please," he said, his eyes never leaving her face. "Are you enjoying the gala?" "It is lovely," Sofia replied carefully. "The venue is beautiful." An awkward silence fell. Diego, sensing the strange tension, excused himself to get more drinks. Leaving Sofia alone with the intense billionaire who was still looking at her like she was a puzzle he needed to solve. "You do not seem comfortable here," Julian observed, moving slightly closer. Sofia bristled at his presumptuousness. "And you can tell that how exactly?" "By watching me from across the room." A flicker of surprise crossed Julian's face, followed by something that might have been amusement. "So you noticed? It's kind of hard not to notice when someone stares at you like they are trying to memorize your face." Sofia replied, crossing her arms. "Is there something you wanted, Mr. Blackwood?" Julian realized he was handling this terribly. He was used to boardroom negotiations, not trying to talk to a beautiful woman who clearly was not impressed by his wealth or status. "I wanted to know who you were," he admitted. "And now I am wondering why you came here with him." Sofia's eyes flashed. "Excuse me? That is absolutely none of your business. Are you together?" Julian pressed, unable to stop himself, even though he knew he was being inappropriate. "Again, none of your business," Sofia said coldly. "What gives you the right to ask me that?" Julian stepped closer, and Sofia could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her head spin. "Tell me you do not feel this," he said quietly, his voice dropping to an intimate tone. "This connection between us. Tell me I am imagining it." Sofia's heart was pounding, but she refused to let him see how much he was affecting her. "You are imagining it. I do not even know you." "Then let me change that," Julian said. "Have dinner with me." "Tomorrow night?" "I am here with Diego," Sofia pointed out, though her resolve was weakening under the intensity of Julian's gaze. "He is your colleague, not your boyfriend," Julian stated with certainty. "Otherwise you would have said so." Before Sofia could respond, Diego returned with drinks, and the moment shattered. Julian accepted a glass with stiff politeness, but his eyes never left Sofia's face. The three of them made awkward small talk for several minutes, with Diego trying to fill the tense silence and Sofia actively avoiding looking at Julian. Finally, Diego suggested they dance, and Sofia agreed quickly, eager to escape the magnetic pull of Julian Blackwood. As Diego led her onto the dance floor, Sofia could feel Julian's eyes following her every movement. Diego pulled her into a comfortable waltz position and smiled down at her. "Well, that was interesting. It was uncomfortable," Sofia corrected. "He wants you," Diego said bluntly. "I have never seen Julian Blackwood look at anyone like that. The man is famous for being completely emotionless in public." "I do not care what he wants," Sofia insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. "He is arrogant and presumptuous. He is also completely captivated by you," Diego pointed out. "Do you know how rare that is? Julian Blackwood does not do relationships. He does not do emotions. Yet he looked at you like you were the only person in this entire ballroom." Sofia shook her head. "It does not matter. I am not interested in billionaires who think they can have whatever they want just because they are rich." But even as she said it, Sofia's eyes found Julian standing at the edge of the dance floor, watching her with that same intense expression. When their gazes locked, something electric passed between them, and Sofia stumbled slightly in Diego's arms. Julian watched Sofia dance with Diego and felt the jealousy intensify. The way Diego's hand rested on her waist, the way they moved together in perfect rhythm. It made Julian want to cross the dance floor and pull her into his own arms. He wanted to be the one making her smile, the one she was looking at with those warm honey eyes. This was insane. Julian Blackwood did not get jealous. He did not obsess over women he had just met. He did not feel this overwhelming need to possess someone. Yet here he was, consumed by feelings he could not control or understand. Catherine appeared at his side again, following his gaze. "You are staring, Julian. It is becoming obvious." "I do not care," Julian replied, surprising himself with the admission. "Who is she?" Catherine asked with genuine curiosity. "Her name is Sofia Ramirez." "She works at an art gallery," Julian said, the words tasting sweet on his tongue. "And I am going to make her mine." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "That is a very possessive statement from a man who does not do relationships." "I do not," Julian agreed. "But for her, I might make an exception." The song ended, and Sofia stepped back from Diego, laughing at something he said. Julian made his decision in that instant. He crossed the dance floor in long strides, reaching them just as another song began. "May I?" Julian asked, though it was not really a question. His hand was already extended toward Sofia. Diego glanced at Sofia, silently asking if she was okay with this. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. Diego stepped back with a knowing smile and melted into the crowd. Julian pulled Sofia into his arms. The world seemed to shrink until it contained only the two of them. His hand on her waist burned through the silk of her dress. Her hand in his felt impossibly right. They moved together to the music, and Sofia was uncomfortably aware of how perfectly they fit. "You are angry," Sofia observed, looking up at him. "Yes," Julian admitted. "Why?" "Because I have been watching you all night with him, and it is driving me crazy," Julian said bluntly. "Because I cannot stop thinking about you even though we just met. Because you are here with another man, and I want you to be here with me." Sofia's breath caught. "You do not even know me." "I know enough," Julian said, his voice low and intense. "I know that you are intelligent and observant. I know that you are not impressed by money or status. I know that you are kind enough to accompany your colleague to an event even though you did not want to come. I know that when you smile, it lights up your entire face. And I know that there is something between us, whether you want to admit it or not." "That is just attraction," Sofia said, trying to sound dismissive even though her heart was racing. "Physical chemistry." "It does not mean anything," liar Julian said softly. "You feel it too. This is more than just attraction." Sofia wanted to deny it, but she could not find the words. Because he was right. There was something between them, something she had never experienced before. It terrified her. "Are you jealous?" Sofia asked suddenly, remembering how he had looked watching her dance with Diego. "Is that what this is about?" Julian's jaw tightened, and his hand on her waist tightened slightly. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, with brutal honesty, he answered, "Yes, I am jealous. Furiously, irrationally jealous of a man I do not even know, simply because he made you smile." The admission hung between them, raw and vulnerable. Sofia stared up at Julian, seeing past the billionaire facade to the man underneath. A man who was just as confused and overwhelmed by this connection as she was. The music swelled around them. And Julian pulled her closer until there was barely any space between their bodies. Sofia's hand trembled in his, and she saw his gray eyes darken with something that made her stomach flip. "Have dinner with me?" Julian said again. But this time, it was not a command. It was a request. "Please, Sofia. Let me take you to dinner tomorrow night. Let me get to know you properly." Sofia knew she should say no. Every logical part of her brain was screaming that getting involved with Julian Blackwood would be a mistake. He was too intense, too wealthy, too used to getting what he wanted. They came from completely different worlds. But standing there in his arms, feeling the heat of his body against hers, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, Sofia found herself saying something she had not planned. "One dinner?" She agreed quietly. "Just one." Julian's entire face transformed. The storm clouds in his eyes cleared, replaced by something warm and victorious. He smiled for the first time that night, and it took Sophia's breath away. One dinner, Julian agreed, knowing it would not be enough. Knowing that one dinner with Sofia Ramirez would never be enough, he was already planning the second date before the first had even begun. As the song ended, and they slowly separated, both felt the loss of contact like a physical ache. Julian released her hand reluctantly, his fingers lingering against hers for one extra heartbeat. "I will pick you up at 7 tomorrow," Julian said. Sophia nodded, not trusting her voice. She watched as Julian walked away, his tall figure cutting through the crowd with confidence. What had she just agreed to? And why did the thought of seeing him again tomorrow fill her with equal parts excitement and terror? Diego reappeared at her side, grinning widely. "So, that looked intense." "Shut up," Sophia said, but she was smiling despite herself. "You are going out with him, are you not?" Diego asked knowingly. Sophia sighed. "Just one dinner." "What is the worst that could happen?" Diego laughed. "Oh, Sophia! With a man like Julian Blackwood, everything could happen." And as Sophia left the gala that night, Julian's gray eyes following her until she disappeared from view, I had the unsettling feeling that Diego was absolutely right. Everything was about to change, and there was no going back now. Sophia spent the entire next day questioning her decision. She stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes that evening, pulling out dresses and rejecting them one by one. Nothing felt right. Everything was either too casual or trying too hard. Finally, she settled on a simple black dress that hit just above her knees. Elegant without being overstated. At exactly 7 o'clock, her doorbell rang. Sophia took a deep breath, grabbed her clutch, and opened the door. Julian stood there in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, no tie, the top button of his white shirt undone. He looked impossibly handsome and slightly nervous, which somehow made him more human. "You look beautiful," Julian said, his voice sincere. "Thank you," Sophia replied, stepping out and locking her door. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere quiet," Julian said, guiding her toward a sleek black car waiting at the curb. "I thought we could actually talk without 100 people watching us." The restaurant Julian chose was intimate and exclusive, tucked away on a quiet street far from the tourist areas. They were seated at a private table near a window overlooking a small garden lit with string lights. It was romantic without being overwhelming, and Sophia found herself relaxing slightly. So Julian said once they had ordered, "Tell me about yourself. The real story, not the polite small talk version." Sophia considered him for a moment. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," Julian replied simply. "Start with why you became an art curator." Something about his genuine interest made Sophia open up. She told him about growing up in Barcelona, about her mother who was a painter and her father who worked in a bookshop. She described how she had fallen in love with art as a child, spending hours in museums while other kids played outside. She explained her move to this city 3 years ago. Chasing an opportunity at the Castellano Gallery, Julian listened intently, asking thoughtful questions, and Sophia found herself sharing things she rarely told anyone. The conversation flowed naturally, moving from art to books to travel to philosophy. They debated the merit of modern art versus classical. They discussed their favorite cities and the places they dreamed of visiting. "Your turn," Sophia said eventually, leaning back in her chair. "Tell me about Julian Blackwood. The real version, not the billionaire CEO everyone reads about in magazines." Julian's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "There is not much to tell. I built a company. It became successful. End of story." "That is the magazine version," Sophia pointed out. "I want the real story. Why technology? What drives you? What do you do when you are not making billions of dollars?" Julian was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing patterns on the tablecloth. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful, measured. "I do not talk about myself much." "I noticed," Sophia said gently. "But I just spent an hour telling you my life story." "Fair is fair." Julian met her eyes, and something in her honest gaze made him want to try. "I grew up poor," he said quietly. "Not struggling middle class. Actually poor. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. My father left when I was 6, and we never heard from him again. Sophia's expression softened, but she did not interrupt. I taught myself to code when I was 12 using a computer at the library, Julian continued. I knew it was my ticket out. By 16, I was building websites for local businesses. By 18, I had my first real contract with a tech company. I put myself through university, started my own company at 23, and never looked back. And your mother? Sophia asked softly. A genuine smile crossed Julian's face. She lives in a house I bought her in the countryside. She finally retired last year, though she complains about being bored. She keeps trying to get me to settle down and give her grandchildren. Smart woman, Sophia said, smiling. Julian laughed, the sound surprising them both. She would like you. You are stubborn enough to handle her. I have not agreed to meet your mother, Sophia pointed out. Not yet, Julian said, his eyes holding hers. But you will. The certainty in his voice should have annoyed Sophia, but instead, it sent a warm flutter through her chest. You are very confident. I know what I want, Julian said simply. And I want to know you, Sophia. All of you. The parts you show the world, and the parts you hide. Sophia felt her defenses crumbling. Why me? You could have anyone. Julian leaned forward, his expression intense. Because you are real. Because you looked at me last night and did not see my bank account or my reputation. You saw me. Because when I am with you, I feel something I have not felt in years. Maybe ever. What do you feel? Sophia whispered. Alive, Julian said. Like I finally found something worth more than any business deal or company acquisition. Like maybe there is more to life than just building empires. The vulnerability in his admission made Sophia's heart ache. She reached across the table and took his hand. Julian, I need you to understand something. I am not looking for a fairy tale. I have my own life, my own career, my own dreams. I cannot be some billionaire's accessory. I do not want an accessory, Julian said firmly, his hand tightening around hers. I want a partner, someone who challenges me, someone who will not let me hide behind my walls. Someone like you. They stayed at the restaurant until it closed, talking about everything and nothing. Julian told her about the loneliness of success, how he had built walls around himself to protect from people who only wanted his money or connections. Sophia shared her fears about never being taken seriously in the art world, about always being seen as just another curator instead of someone with vision and talent. When Julian finally drove her home, neither wanted the night to end. He walked her to her door, and they stood there in the dim hallway light, the air between them charged with possibility. I want to see you again, Julian said. Tomorrow. And the day after? And every day after that, if you will let me. Sophia looked up at him, seeing past the powerful CEO to the lonely man underneath. She saw someone who had built walls just like she had, someone who was terrified of being hurt, someone who was taking a risk by opening up to her. I am scared, Sophia admitted. This is happening so fast. We barely know each other. Julian cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing across her cheek. I am scared too. But I would rather be scared with you than safe without you. Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. What if we ruin this? What if the reality cannot live up to whatever this intensity is? Then we will deal with it together, Julian said. But Sophia, I need you to know something. I have never felt this way about anyone. I've never wanted someone the way I want you. Not just physically, though God knows I do. But I want to know every thought in your head. I want to hear about your day. I want to be the person you call when something good happens or when something goes wrong. I want all of it. That is terrifying, Sophia whispered. I know, Julian agreed. But some things are worth being terrified for. Sophia made her decision in that moment. She rose up on her toes and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, testing. But then Julian's arms came around her, pulling her close, and the kiss deepened. It was a kiss full of promise and hunger, and something that felt dangerously close to falling. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Julian rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. Stay with me tonight, he said quietly. Just to talk. I have a guest room. I just do not want this night to end yet. Sophia knew she should say no. Knew she should go inside alone and put some distance between them, but she found herself nodding instead. Okay, just to talk? Julian's penthouse was exactly what Sophia expected. Modern, expensive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But it was also strangely impersonal, like a hotel room rather than a home. There were no photographs, no personal touches, nothing that revealed the man who lived there. This does not look like anyone actually lives here, Sophia observed. Wandering through the living room, Julian looked around as if seeing it for the first time. I suppose it does not. I am rarely here. I usually sleep at the office. That is sad, Sophia said bluntly. Julian smiled. You are not afraid to tell me the truth, are you? Should I be? Most people are, Julian admitted. They tell me what they think I want to hear. I am not most people, Sophia said, settling onto the couch. No, Julian agreed, sitting beside her. You are definitely not. They talked until dawn broke over the city, sitting close on the couch, hands intertwined. Julian told her about the pressure of running a multi-billion-dollar company, about the board members who questioned his every decision, about the weight of knowing thousands of people depended on him for their livelihoods. Sophia shared her dreams of opening her own gallery someday, of giving unknown artists the platform they deserved. She told him about her complicated relationship with her parents, who loved her but did not understand her choices. She confessed her fear of never being enough, of always falling short of some invisible standard. As the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Julian pulled Sophia closer. She rested her head on his shoulder, and for the first time in years, Julian felt peace. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of someone who made the problems feel manageable. I should go, Sophia said softly, though she made no move to leave. I have work in a few hours. Call in sick, Julian suggested, his fingers playing with her hair. I cannot just call in sick because a billionaire wants me to stay, Sophia said, but she was smiling. Why not? I do it all the time, Julian teased. Sophia sat up and looked at him seriously. Julian, I need you to understand something. My work matters to me. My independence matters. I cannot be the kind of person who drops everything for a relationship. I do not want you to be, Julian assured her. Your passion for your work is part of what draws me to you. But I also want to be part of your life. Is that so wrong? No, Sophia admitted. But we need to take this slowly. Really get to know each other. Not just have this intense whirlwind thing that burns out in a month. Julian nodded, though every instinct in him wanted to pull her closer and never let go. Slowly. I can do slowly. Starting with dinner again tonight? Sophia laughed. That is not slowly. Dinner every night for a month is slower than moving in together tomorrow, Julian pointed out. You are impossible, Sophia said, but she was smiling. Is that a yes to dinner? Sophia kissed him softly. Yes. But I picked the place this time. Somewhere normal people go? I am dating a woman who thinks I need to eat like normal people, Julian said with mock despair. Dating? Sophia raised an eyebrow. Who said anything about dating? Julian's expression grew serious. I am saying it. I want to date you, Sophia. Officially. Exclusively. I want you to be mine. The possessiveness in his tone should have bothered her, but instead it made Sophia's heart race. And what do I get in return? Me, Julian said simply. All of me. The good, the bad, the workaholic tendencies, the jealousy, the walls I have built. I will tear them all down for you if you give me a chance. Sophia looked at this powerful man who was laying himself bare for her, offering her everything despite knowing each other for barely 2 days. It was crazy. It was reckless. It was everything she usually avoided. Okay, she said quietly. Let us try this. But Julian, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you will be honest with me. Even when it is hard. Even when you want to hide behind your walls. Promise me you will let me see the real you. Julian took her hands in his gray eyes intense and sincere. I promise. If you promise me the same thing, I promise, Sophia agreed. They sealed the promise with a kiss, neither knowing that they were beginning something that would change both their lives forever. neither knowing the challenges they would face or the obstacles they would overcome, but both knowing that whatever happened next, they wanted to face it together. As Sophia finally left Julian's penthouse that morning, the sun fully risen and the city coming to life below, she felt like she was stepping into a new chapter of her life, one filled with possibility and risk, and a man whose intensity both terrified and thrilled her. Julian watched her go, already counting the hours until he would see her again. For the first time in his adult life, something mattered more than his company, more than his success, more than his carefully constructed world. Sophia mattered, and he would do whatever it took to keep her in his life. The next 3 months passed in a blur of discovery and deepening connection. Sophia and Julian navigated their relationship with a mixture of caution and abandon, learning each other's rhythms and respecting each other's boundaries. True to her word, Sophia maintained her independence, continuing to throw herself into her work at the gallery while Julian struggled to balance his demanding schedule with his growing need to be near her. Their differences became both their greatest challenge and their strongest bond. Sophia introduced Julian to her world of small galleries and emerging artists, dragging him to exhibition openings in converted warehouses where he was the most overdressed person in the room. Julian showed Sophia glimpses of his empire, not to impress her, but to help her understand the weight he carried every day. One evening, Sophia arrived at Julian's office unannounced with takeout food, finding him hunched over his desk at 9 o'clock, stress evident in every line of his body. His assistant had left hours ago, and the building was nearly empty. "When did you last eat?" Sophia asked, setting the bags on his desk. Julian looked up, surprise and relief flooding his features. "Breakfast, I think." "What are you doing here?" "Rescuing you from yourself," Sophia said, clearing space among his papers. "You have been working 16-hour days all week. Even billionaires need to eat." Julian pushed back from his desk and pulled her into his lap, burying his face in her neck. "I missed you. This week has been hell." Sophia ran her fingers through his hair, feeling the tension in his shoulders. "Tell me about it." As they ate, Julian explained the hostile takeover attempt by a rival company, the board meetings that had stretched for hours, the difficult decisions he had to make that would affect hundreds of employees. Sophia listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions and offering perspective when he needed it. "You carry too much alone," Sophia observed. "You have an entire executive team. Why do you feel like you have to solve everything yourself?" Julian was quiet for a moment, "Because that is what I've always done. Since I was a kid, it was just me and my mother against the world. I learned early that if I wanted something done right, I had to do it myself." "That is a lonely way to live," Sophia said softly. "It was," Julian agreed, tightening his arms around her. "Until you." Sophia turned in his lap to face him. "You do not have to be alone anymore, Julian. Let me share the burden. Even if I cannot solve your business problems, I can listen. I can be here." Julian kissed her, pouring all his gratitude and growing love into the gesture. "How did I get so lucky?" he murmured against her lips. "You stalked me at a gala and got jealous over Diego," Sophia teased. "Best decision I ever made," Julian said with a smile. "But not everything was easy. Their different worlds collided in uncomfortable ways." At a gallery event Sophia had organized, Julian struggled to contain his irritation when a pretentious art critic spent 20 minutes monopolizing her attention, his hand lingering too long on her arm. Sophia had to pull Julian aside and remind him that networking was part of her job. "He was touching you," Julian said tightly. "He was being friendly," Sophia countered. "Julian, you cannot glare at every man who talks to me. I work in a social industry." "I know that," Julian said, running his hand through his hair in frustration. "I know I am being unreasonable. But when I see other men looking at you, wanting you, it makes me crazy." Sophia cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. "I am here with you. I choose you. Every day I choose you. But you have to trust me, Julian. This possessiveness, it is sweet in small doses, but it cannot control my life." Julian closed his eyes, fighting against instincts he had never had to confront before. I am trying. I swear I am trying. This is new for me, Sophia. Caring this much about someone? Being this vulnerable. It terrifies me. It terrifies me too, Sophia admitted. But we cannot let fear make us toxic. We have to trust each other. Julian nodded slowly. You are right. I will work on it. Just be patient with me, always, Sophia promised, kissing him softly. The real test came when Julian had to travel to Tokyo for 2 weeks for crucial negotiations. It was the longest they would be apart since they started dating, and neither was handling it well. They video called every day, sometimes multiple times, working around the 13-hour time difference on the 5th day. Sophia was setting up for a major exhibition when Diego approached her with concern on his face. You look exhausted. Are you sleeping? Not much, Sophia admitted. The time difference makes it hard. By the time Julian is free to call, it is 3 in the morning here. Sophia, you cannot keep this up, Diego said gently. You are going to burn out. I'm fine, Sophia insisted, but even she could hear how unconvincing she sounded. That night, when Julian called, Sophia could not hide her exhaustion. Julian noticed immediately. You look tired, love. Are you okay? Just missing you, Sophia said, trying to smile. The apartment feels too empty without you. Julian's expression grew concerned. Sophia, you need to sleep. We can talk tomorrow. No, I want to talk now, Sophia protested. I barely see you as it is. I am coming home, Julian decided suddenly. What? No, Julian. Your negotiations are important. You are more important, Julian said firmly. I can video conference for the rest. I am booking a flight right now. You cannot just abandon a multi-million-dollar deal because I am tired, Sophia argued, though part of her desperately wanted him home. Watch me, Julian said, already typing on his laptop. I will be home tomorrow evening. Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. You would really do that? Leave everything and come home? Julian stopped typing and looked at her seriously through the screen. Sophia, there is nothing more important to me than you. Not the company, not the deals, not anything. If you need me, I will be there, always. I love you, Sophia said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. It was the first time either of them had said it. Julian froze, his eyes widening. What did you say? Sophia felt panic rise in her chest. I said I love you. I am sorry. I know it is too soon. I should not have. Say it again, Julian interrupted, his voice rough with emotion. I love you, Sophia repeated, tears streaming down her face now. I love you, Julian Blackwood. I love your intensity and your vulnerability. I love how you try so hard to be better. I love that you would drop everything to come home to me. Julian's eyes were suspiciously bright. I love you too, Sophia. God, I love you so much it scares me. I have loved you since that first night at the gala when you challenged me instead of fawning over me. I have just been too afraid to say it. They stayed on the video call for another hour, just looking at each other, saying I love you over and over like they were making up for lost time. Julian did come home the next day, walking into Sophia's apartment at 8 in the evening, looking exhausted but determined. Sophia, I launched herself into his arms. And Julian caught her, holding her like he would never let go. I am home, he whispered into her hair. I am home. They spent that night wrapped in each other's arms, not making love, but simply holding each other, reassuring themselves that this was real, that they had found something worth fighting for. The following weeks brought new challenges. Julian's mother, Rosa, insisted on meeting Sophia. The lunch was arranged at a quiet restaurant. Sophia was more nervous than she had been for any gallery opening. Rosa Blackwood was a small woman with kind eyes and Julian's strong jawline. She hugged Sophia immediately, ignoring her outstretched hand. So you are the woman who finally tamed my son, Rosa said with a warm smile. I did not tame him, Sophia protested. I just love him. Rosa's eyes softened. That is exactly what he needs. Someone who loves him, not his money. Julian has been alone for too long, building walls to keep people out. Over lunch, Rosa shared stories of Julian's childhood, painting a picture of a brilliant, determined boy who grew up too fast. Sophia saw where Julian got his strength and his vulnerability. By the end of the meal, Rosa was holding Sophia's hand and declaring she was exactly the daughter she had always wanted. "She loves you," Julian said later, relief evident in his voice. "She called me after you left. She said you are perfect for me." "Your mother is wonderful," Sophia said honestly. "I see so much of you in her." "She's everything I aspire to be," Julian admitted. "Strong, loving, resilient. She never let poverty or hardship make her bitter." Sophia's own parents were next. They flew in from Barcelona, and Sophia was anxious about how they would react to Julian. Her father, a quiet intellectual, and her mother, a free-spirited artist, were so different from Julian's corporate world, but Julian charmed them effortlessly. He spoke passable Spanish, having learned it in university. He engaged Sophia's father in discussions about literature and asked intelligent questions about her mother's paintings. By the end of the weekend, her parents were convinced Julian was good enough for their daughter. "He loves you," Sophia's mother said privately. "I can see it in how he looks at you. Like you are his whole world." "He is mine too, Mama," Sophia confessed. As summer turned to fall, Sophia and Julian found their rhythm. They learned to balance their demanding careers with their relationship. They had their first real fight about Julian working through a weekend they had planned together, and their first real reconciliation where both apologized and compromised. Julian learned to let Sophia have her independence, to trust that she would come home to him even when other men showed interest. Sophia learned to let Julian take care of her sometimes, to accept that his gestures came from love, not a need to control. One evening in late October, Julian took Sophia back to the spot where they had their first real conversation, the restaurant with the garden view. But this time, the garden was decorated with thousands of tiny lights, creating a magical atmosphere. "What is all this?" Sophia asked, enchanted. Julian led her outside to the garden where rose petals created a path to the center. In the middle stood a single table with 2 chairs and champagne waiting. Julian, Sophia breathed, her heart beginning to race. Julian turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Sophia, 8 months ago I saw you at a gala and my entire world shifted. I did not know it then, but I was looking at my future. You have changed everything about how I see life. You taught me that success means nothing without someone to share it with. You showed me that being vulnerable is not weakness. It is strength." Julian dropped to one knee, and Sophia gasped, tears already streaming down her face. "You make me want to be better. To do better, to live better," Julian continued, pulling a velvet box from his pocket. "I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. I want to fight with you and make up with you. I want to build a family with you and grow old with you. Sophia Ramirez, will you marry me?" He opened the box, revealing a stunning ring. Not the largest diamond he could afford, but a perfect emerald surrounded by smaller diamonds. The same color as the dress she wore the night they met? "Yes," Sophia sobbed, dropping to her knees in front of him. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. I love you so much, Julian." Julian slipped the ring on her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her into a kiss that tasted of tears and joy and promise. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying and laughing at the same time. "I was so nervous," Julian admitted. "What if you had said no?" "Never," Sophia said fiercely. "You are stuck with me now, Blackwood." "Best fate I could imagine," Julian replied. Kissing her again, they celebrated with champagne in the enchanted garden, planning their future together. They decided on a small wedding, just family and close friends. They talked about keeping their separate apartments for now, but spending most nights together. They discussed Sophia's dream of opening her own gallery, and Julian's desire to step back from the company eventually. "I want to travel with you," Julian said, holding her close. "I want to show you the world. I want to take time to actually live instead of just working." "We'll do all of it," Sophia promised. Together, engagement party was held at Julian's penthouse, which Sophia had slowly transformed into an actual home over the months. There were photographs now of them together, of their families. There were books Sophia loved scattered on tables. There were plants by the windows and art on the walls. It finally looked like people lived there, like love lived there. Diego gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. I knew from the moment Julian looked at Sophia at that gala that something extraordinary was happening. I've never seen two people more perfectly matched in stubbornness, intelligence, and capacity for love. To Julian and Sophia, may your love story never end. Catherine Winters, who had become an unexpected friend to Sophia, pulled her aside during the party. You know, Julian is a different person since he met you. Lighter, somehow. More human. Thank you for that. He did the same for me, Sophia said honestly. He taught me that love does not mean losing yourself. It means finding yourself reflected in someone else's eyes. As the party wound down and guests departed, Julian and Sophia stood on the balcony overlooking the city, exactly where they had stood that first morning after talking all night. Are you happy? Julian asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Sophia leaned back against him, watching the city lights twinkle below. Happier than I ever thought possible. Are you? Deliriously, Julian said, kissing her temple. Though I still cannot believe you said yes. Cannot believe you asked, Sophia countered. 8 months ago, if someone had told me I would be engaged to Julian Blackwood, I would have laughed in their face. 8 months ago. If someone had told me I would find the love of my life, I would have said love was for fools, Julian admitted. Now I know it is. I am a complete fool for you, Sophia, good Sophia said, turning in his arms to face him, because I am a complete fool for you too. They kissed under the stars, two people who had found each other against all odds. Too strong. Independent souls who had learned that true strength came from allowing yourself to be vulnerable with the right person. Two hearts that had been guarded for so long, finally finding a safe place to rest. The wedding took place 6 months later in a small vineyard outside the city. Sophia wore a simple white dress that made Julian's breath catch when he saw her walking down the aisle. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising not perfection but honesty, not ease but effort, not fairy tale romance but real messy, beautiful love. When Julian kissed his bride, sealing their promise to each other, Sophia felt like every moment of her life had led to this. Every heartbreak, every doubt, every lonely night had been worth it to find this man. This love, this life. I love you, Mrs. Blackwood, Julian whispered against her lips. Love you too, Sophia replied, though I am keeping Ramirez professionally. Julian laughed. I would expect nothing less. They danced their first dance as husband and wife to the same song that had played at the gala where they met. Julian held Sophia close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, exactly where it belonged. No regrets? Julian asked softly. Not a single one, Sophia assured him. You only that I did not find you sooner, Julian said. But maybe we needed to become who we are before we could find each other. Maybe, Sophia agreed. Or maybe the universe just has a twisted sense of timing. As the night wore on, and they celebrated with the people they loved most, Sophia thought about that night at the gala. She had gone reluctantly, never imagining it would change her life. She had danced with Julian out of curiosity, never knowing she was dancing with her future, and when he had asked if she felt the connection between them, why she had lied and said no. But she felt it now, stronger than ever. A connection that had survived jealousy and distance, independence and vulnerability, fear and love, years later. When people asked how they met, Julian would smile and say, I saw her at a party with another man and got insanely jealous. Even though I had no right to be, Sophia would add. He asked if I felt the connection between us, and I lied and said no. Best lie I ever told, because it made me admit the truth to myself. Their love story was not perfect. They still fought sometimes, still challenged each other, still drove each other crazy. But they also laughed together, dreamed together, and built a life together that was richer than either could have imagined alone. Julian never stopped being intense or possessive, but he learned to channel it into loving Sophia fiercely and supporting her dreams unconditionally. Sophia never stopped being independent or challenging, but she learned that accepting love did not mean losing herself. They had 2 children eventually, a daughter who had Sophia's warm eyes and Julian's determination, and a son who had Julian's quiet intensity and Sophia's creative spirit. They opened a gallery together, combining Sophia's vision with Julian's business acumen. Giving opportunities to artists who deserved a chance, Julian stepped back from the day-to-day running of his company, appointing a CEO while he remained chairman. He wanted time for what mattered most: his family, his wife, the life they were building together. On their 10th anniversary, they returned to that garden restaurant where Julian had proposed. The lights still twinkled like stars, and the roses still bloomed in profusion. "You remember what you asked me that first night we danced?" Sophia said, sitting across from Julian at their special table. "I asked if you felt the connection between us," Julian recalled. "And I said I did not," Sophia continued. "But if you ask me now?" Julian reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb brushing over her wedding ring. "What would you say now?" Sophia smiled, her eyes filled with a decade of love and memories and shared dreams. "I would say that what I feel for you goes beyond connection. It is recognition. You are the piece of my soul I did not know was missing. You are my home, my adventure, my peace, and my passion, all at once." Julian felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I love you, Sophia. More with every passing day. You are the best decision I ever made." "We were the best decision we ever made," Sophia corrected. "Because we chose each other. Not just once at that gala, but every day since. We keep choosing each other, and that is what makes this real." They kissed across the table. No longer the guarded strangers they had been a decade ago, but partners who had weathered storms and celebrated victories together. Two people who had learned that love was not about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone perfect for you. As they left the restaurant that night, hand in hand under the stars, Sophia thought about the woman she had been at that gala so many years ago. Guarded, independent, certain she did not need anyone. And while she was still independent and strong, she had learned that needing someone was not weakness. It was wisdom. Julian had taught her that you could be powerful and vulnerable at the same time. That true strength came from opening your heart despite the risk. That love, real love, did not diminish you, but expanded you into someone more than you could be alone. And Sophia had taught Julian that money and success meant nothing without someone to share them with. That vulnerability was not failure, but courage. That the strongest walls were the ones you built together, not the ones you hid behind alone. Their story was not a fairy tale. It was better. It was real, messy, complicated, and absolutely beautiful. It was jealousy transforming into trust, walls crumbling into bridges, fear evolving into love. And as they drove home that night to their children and their life together, both knew that they would do it all over again. Every moment of doubt, every challenge overcome, every risk taken. Because in the end, they had found what so many people spend their whole lives searching for. They had found each other. And that made everything else worthwhile. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like. Share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.
He Silent Queen's Revenge. Stop. If you crave epic stories of ultimate justice, you have to subscribe right now and hit the notification bell. Don't miss a single twist. The woman in the modest navy blue dress. He thought he had all the cards. At the peak of New York Fashion Week, the most photographed event of the year, Victor Sterling was ready to unveil his new life. Dangling from his arm wasn't his quiet, self-effacing wife, but his dazzling mistress, Serafina Silver, a woman he was proudly presenting as his future. He was moments away from a promotion that would cement his legacy. But in a world built on image and power, the most devastating secrets are the ones hidden in plain sight. What happens when the woman you discard turns out to be the sole owner of your entire universe? Prepare yourself for a story of betrayal, public humiliation, and an epic revenge that proves you should never, ever underestimate the silent ones. Part 1. The Beige Wife. The air in the Manhattan penthouse overlooking Central Park was thick with the scent of expensive cologne and simmering resentment. Victor Sterling adjusted the knot of his silk tie. His reflection in the floor-to-ceiling glass showed a man carved by ambition. Tonight was the apex of his career, the culmination of a decade spent elbowing his way up the corporate ladder at Aurelian Vanguard, the global luxury fashion conglomerate. The annual Vanguard Gala, the centerpiece of NY Fashion Week, was his stage. And tonight, he would finally shed the last vestige of his former, insignificant life. That life was standing by the master bedroom doorway, holding a lint roller, Eleanor, his wife of 10 years. "You have something on your shoulder, honey," she said, her voice soft, almost apologetic, as if his perfection were a shared responsibility, and she had somehow failed. Victor didn't turn. He just glared at his reflection, a flicker of irritation crossing his handsome face. "I've got it, Eleanor." He brushed an invisible speck from his custom-tailored suit. The suit was a statement. It screamed power, success, and a future she was not part of. Eleanor stepped back slightly, holding the lint roller like a useless talisman. She was dressed in a simple, elegant, but forgettable navy blue dress. It was the kind of dress women wore when they didn't want to be noticed, when their primary function was to be a supportive shadow. For 10 years, she had played that role to perfection. She'd organized his life, hosted his boring but necessary business dinners, remembered his superiors' children's birthdays, and celebrated his every minor victory as if it were a moon landing. She had been the perfect, silent, homebody wife, and he was monumentally sick of it. "Is the car ready?" he asked. "C'est à cheat." His tone clipped. He checked his phone, the screen lighting up with a message from his starlet, a photo of her in a shimmering, backless silver gown. The caption read, "Ready to be introduced, my love." A slow, predatory smile touched Victor's lips. "It's been waiting downstairs for 10 minutes, Eleanor replied. He could hear the faint tremor in her voice. She wasn't stupid. She'd known something was wrong for months. The late nights he no longer bothered to explain. The scent of a different perfume on his shirts. The cold chasm that had opened between them in their king-sized bed. But she had never once confronted him. That was Eleanor. She was pathologically conflict-averse. She absorbed his neglect and cruelty with a quiet, maddening stoicism. "Good," he said, pocketing his phone. "I'm leaving." He finally turned to face her. He allowed his gaze to sweep her figure, from her sensible low heels to her neat, pinned-up brown hair. There was nothing wrong with her. She was pleasant-looking. She was sweet. But she was wallpaper in a world of vibrant, contrasting statement art. She was beige wallpaper. He was a masterpiece trapped in a beige room. "You look nice," he offered, the compliment as hollow as the vows he made at their wedding. "You look incredible, Victor." she said, and her sincerity was a dull ache in his chest. "I hope you have a wonderful night. I know how important this is. The promotion to Chief Operating Officer for North America is practically mine," he interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. "Mr. Allister is retiring. He practically told me the job was mine last week. Tonight is just the coronation." He craved that title more than anything. It was the key to everything. The power, the respect, the life he truly deserved. A life with a woman like Serafina, a woman who shone as brightly as he did. He walked toward the door, his hand on the knob. He felt a fleeting, minuscule pang of what might have been guilt. But he crushed it. This was necessary. Evolution. A snake shedding its skin. "Don't wait up for me," he said. The words were a final, casual severance. He didn't look back as he left the apartment, the heavy door clicking shut behind him, sealing her inside her gilded cage. He didn't see her shudder. He didn't see her shoulders slump, or how she raised a trembling hand to her lips. He didn't see the single tear that traced her cheek before she deliberately and methodically wiped it away. He only saw the future, and it was gleaming, silver, and waiting for him in the back of a black car downtown. Part 2. The stage is set. As Victor's elevator descended, Eleanor walked to the massive window overlooking the city. New York's lights glittered below, a galaxy of ambition and dreams. His dream was to conquer it. He never paused to ask what her dream was. She picked up her own phone, not the simple one she used for groceries and daily reminders, but a sleek, encrypted device hidden in her study. She scrolled to a single contact, marked only with an initial, T. She typed a short, simple message. "He's on his way. Are we ready?" The reply came back in seconds. "The stage is set, Madam President. We are ready." Eleanor took a deep, steady breath. The first truly full breath she felt she had taken in years. She looked at her reflection, not in the dark window glass, but in the polished screen of the device in her hand. The reflection of the woman in the simple navy blue dress flickered, and for a moment, she saw the queen beneath. Tonight's coronation was not Victor's, it was hers. The grand atrium of the New York Public Library's Astor Hall. It was a cathedral of modern excess. White marble columns soared, holding up a ceiling that revealed the twilight sky. Orchestral music drifted through the air, an elegant facade over the raw, pulsating ambition of the crowd. This was the beating heart of NY Fashion Week, and Victor Sterling felt its rhythm in his blood. He made his entrance not with a bang, but with a calculated seismic shockwave. On his arm was Serafina Silver. She was everything Eleanor was not. Clad in a silver dress that looked poured over her sculpted figure, Serafina was a supernova. Her hair was a platinum cascade. Her smile was a weapon, and her eyes scanned the room with the hungry assessment of a predator who knows she is the most dangerous thing in the jungle. Every camera flash seemed to find them. The frantic clicks created a wall of sound that was music to Victor's ears. He saw the whispers start immediately. He saw Lydia Jones, the city's most feared fashion blogger, her fingers already flying across her phone screen, her expression a mix of shock and delight. He saw his Aurelian vanguard colleagues, eyes wide, some with disapproval, others with a grudging respect for his sheer audacity. This was more than just bringing a date. It was a statement of intent, a public execution of his marriage. "Honey, everyone is watching," Serafina purred, pressing closer to him. Her touch was electric, a jolt of validation. "Let them watch," Victor murmured, his voice low and confident. He steered her toward the main champagne bar, his hand possessively on her lower back. "Tonight we give them something to talk about for the rest of the year." He felt powerful, untouchable. He had outgrown Eleanor, outgrown the quiet, respectable life she represented. That life was a starter home. He was ready for the palace. Serafina was the queen he had chosen to install. Victor, what a surprise. The voice belonged to Mr. Allister's son, Ethan, a man whose position was based on nepotism rather than talent. Ethan's eyes flicked rapidly from Victor to Serafina and back, with a sly, knowing smile. And who is this? Victor's grin widened. This was the moment, the first brick of his new empire. Ethan, I'd like to introduce you to Serafina Silver. My muse, he said, loading the word with meaning. Charmed, Serafina said, extending a hand, her voice a husky whisper that promised secrets and sin. The pleasure is all mine, Ethan drawled, already captivated. A muse, you say? I didn't know you were seeking new inspiration, Victor. Where has Eleanor been hiding tonight? The question was a jab, and Victor felt it, but parried with effortless arrogance. Eleanor is indisposed, he said, his tone suggesting a delicate private matter rather than a brutal discard. She understands my work requires a certain public dynamism. Serafina embodies the new direction I envision for Aurelian vanguard. It was a bold, almost treasonous statement. He was already speaking as if he were in charge, redefining the company's image in his own likeness. He was claiming the throne in front of the prince. They moved through the crowd, a vortex of glamour and gossip. Victor introduced Serafina to designers, to Vogue and Harper's Bazaar editors, to the money men who kept the gears of the fashion world turning. With every introduction, he solidified her position, and by extension, his own. He used phrases like the brand's future face and a new era of inspiration. He was writing a new narrative for himself in real time, and Serafina was his co-author. She played her part with masterful precision. She was charming, witty, and just aloof enough with the right people, while exuding an aura of untouchable stardom. She spoke of Victor's genius, his unmatched vision, and how he was now liberated to truly achieve his destiny. They were a team, a power couple forged in ambition and presented to the world for its adoration. Victor saw Lydia Jones watching him near a marble pillar, her expression unreadable. He decided to address the narrative head-on. Leading Serafina over, he greeted the blogger with a disarming smile. Lydia, always a pleasure. I see you've noticed the main event of the evening. Lydia's eyes, sharp as tailor's needles, took in the sight of them. Victor, you have certainly made a statement, a rather bold one. The press is on fire. Victor Sterling's new muse and the missing wife. Is that the headline you were hoping for? The right headline writes itself only when the story is compelling enough, Victor replied smoothly. Aurelian vanguard isn't about playing it safe. It's about vision, passion, and daring to embrace the future. That is what Serafina represents. That is what I represent. He was intoxicated by his own boldness. The champagne, the flashing lights, Serafina's heady presence on his arm. It all combined into a potent drug. He felt like a king surveying his court, utterly unaware that the ground beneath his throne was about to crumble into a bottomless abyss. He was so focused on the spectacle of Serafina's arrival that he missed the true arrivals of the night. He didn't see the subtle shift in the room's atmosphere, the way the most powerful players, the board members, the old money investors, weren't looking at him or his glittering mistress. Their attention was being drawn elsewhere, toward the stage where preparations were being made for an announcement that had nothing to do with the North American COO. It was an announcement that would redefine power in his world, and Victor Sterling, in his moment of supreme arrogance, was about to become a footnote in a story far grander and more terrifying than he could ever imagine. Interactive question. If you were Eleanor right now, would you choose to unmask Victor privately and save face, or publicly, guaranteeing maximum humiliation. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Part 3. The Wrecking Ball. The gala was in full swing. A symphony of clinking glasses, false laughter, and the relentless, unspoken struggle for position. Victor was at the center of his own storm, and he reveled in the chaos. He stood tall near the imposing ice sculpture of the Aurelian Vanguard logo, a triumphant smile permanently fixed on his face. "The brand has stagnated, you understand," he explained to a trio of influential retailers, his voice just loud enough to be overheard. "Mr. Alistair is a legend, but his time has passed. We need blood. We need fire. We need to appeal to a new generation that values authenticity and boldness." He gestured vaguely toward Serafina, who was laughing with a famous film director nearby. "We need a narrative that feels alive." The retailers, men in their late 60s who had watched ambitious young executives come and go, nodded politely, their expressions unreadable. They had heard this pitch before, in various forms, from countless young Turks who thought they had reinvented the wheel. But Victor's confidence was contagious, and the very public drama he had orchestrated gave his words a certain weight. He wasn't just talking about change, he was embodying it. He felt a hand on his arm. It was Gerald Thompson, the company's CFO, a man whose personality was as gray as his suit. "Victor, a word." Victor sighed internally, but maintained his slick facade. "Gerald, enjoying the party?" "It's an expensive party," Gerald said, his eyes humorless. "Listen, Victor, what you're doing here is risky. The board values stability, tradition. Publicly shaming your wife, a woman who has been nothing but classy, while draping yourself over, well, it's not a good look." Victor let out a short, sharp laugh. "Gerald, my friend, you are a numbers man. You don't understand branding. Good looks are manufactured. I am manufacturing a new one. Power is no longer about stability. It's about disruption. And Eleanor represents stability. Quiet, comfortable, utterly boring stability. That is not the future. She is not the future." He said the last words with such definitive disdain that even Gerald, a man known for his stoicism, looked taken aback. "Be that as it may," the CFO said, lowering his voice. "Old Mr. Alistair is quite fond of your wife, speaks of her warmly. He may not appreciate this spectacle." "Mr. Alistair appreciates results," Victor countered, his patience wearing thin. "And he knows I'm the only one with the guts to deliver them. He's about to name me his successor. A little spectacle will be forgiven when I double our stock price in the next 18 months. Gerald shook his head slowly, the gesture grim. "Just be careful what you wish for, Victor. The marble floors in this place are beautiful, but they're slippery." With that cryptic warning, the CFO melted back into the crowd. Victor scoffed, dismissing the man as a relic. He scanned the room for Serafina and saw her in deep conversation with a New York Times reporter. Perfect. She was planting the seeds, framing the narrative just as they'd rehearsed. The story of the brilliant, repressed executive and his new, liberating muse. The story of Victor Sterling. Unchained. He found himself drifting near a conversation between two of the oldest board members, a pair of sisters, the formidable Chen twins, who had inherited their father's seat, and his unprecedented skepticism, keeping it a secret for so long. The discipline, the sheer audacity, one said to the other. "Father always said the de Montigny family was a different breed," the other replied, her voice a conspiratorial murmur. "They play the long game. They never show their hand until they have a royal flush." Victor frowned, catching the name. De Montigny. He knew the name, of course. It was a legendary name in European finance and textiles, synonymous with old-world power and unimaginable wealth. The family was notoriously private, their empire managed through proxies and labyrinthine holding companies. Aurelian Vanguard itself was a subsidiary of one of those larger, anonymous conglomerates. He'd never given it much thought, other than knowing his ultimate benefactor was a shadowy, powerful entity. He assumed the Chen twins were discussing some arcane business deal, some shift in the parent company's portfolio that was unrelated to his impending ascent. His world, in that moment, was happily small, revolving entirely around himself, his ambition, and the woman in the silver dress. He topped up his champagne, the bubbles effervescing against the glass, mirroring the effervescent excitement in his veins. He was so close, the culmination of everything he had worked for, planned for, and sacrificed. He thought of Eleanor again, a fleeting image of her in that bland navy blue dress. He imagined her at home, maybe watching a boring documentary or reading a book, blissfully unaware that her world was being dismantled and auctioned off to the highest bidder. A small, cruel smile appeared on his lips. She had served her purpose. She had been the stable, respectable wife who helped him climb. But you don't take the ladder to the summit. You kick it away so no one else can follow. The lights in the atrium began to dim, and a hush fell over the crowd. On the stage, a podium was illuminated by a single, bright spotlight. Victor's heart began to hammer in his chest. This was it. He found Serafina's hand and pulled her closer. Their bodies aligned as they turned to face the stage. "Showtime," he whispered in her ear, his voice thick with triumph. She squeezed his hand, her painted nails digging slightly into his skin. "Our show, darling. Never forget it." "Oh, I won't." He looked out at the sea of faces, all of them turned toward the stage, all of them witnesses to his victory. The whispers in the marble had been about him. He was certain of it. He was the story. He was the moment. The universe, in its grand design, had conspired to deliver him to this perfect, triumphant peak. He was absolutely, blissfully, and catastrophically wrong. The man who walked into the spotlight was Mr. Alistair. He was 80 years old, with a mane of white hair and a presence that commanded silence without him having to utter a word. He represented the old guard of fashion, a world of elegance, tradition, and quiet, unbreakable power. His retirement was the end of an era, and the beginning, Victor was sure, of his own. Mr. Alistair tapped the microphone, the soft sound echoing in the cavernous space. "Good evening, friends, colleagues, visionaries," he began, his voice a raspy but warm baritone. "For 40 years, I have had the great honor of standing at the helm of Aurelian Vanguard. We have dressed movie stars and royalty. We have defined decades and weathered the storms of changing tastes. We have built more than a brand. We have built a legacy." The crowd applauded politely. Victor stood a little taller, a confident smile fixed on his face. He felt Serafina press against him, a silent signal of shared victory. "But legacy," Mr. Alistair continued, his gaze sweeping the room, "is not a monument to be admired. It is a living thing. It must be nurtured. It must be challenged. And sometimes, it must be completely reimagined by a new, fearless leader." Victor's heart hammered against his ribs. Fearless leader. He was describing him. He could feel his colleagues' eyes on him. They knew. Everyone knew. Everyone. "Many of you expect me to announce my successor as CEO of Aurelian Vanguard tonight," Mr. Alistair said, a sly twinkle in his eyes. "And we will get to that. But first, there is a much more significant announcement to be made. One that concerns the very ownership and future direction of our parent company, the Global de Montigny Group." A flicker of confusion crossed Victor's mind. De Montigny? Why was he talking about the holding company? It was a distant, faceless entity. He wanted to hear his name, feel the applause wash over him. This was an unnecessary delay. "As many know, the de Montigny family has always valued its privacy," Mr. Alistair explained. For the last 50 years, the empire has been managed by a board of trustees, waiting for the heir to come of age and decide to take their rightful place at the head of the table. That moment has arrived. A murmur rippled through the crowd. This was unexpected. The notoriously private de Montigny heir was taking control. This changed everything. The Chen twins were now staring at the stage, mouths slightly agape. They knew. Victor's mind raced. What did this mean for him? Would a new, unknown owner honor Alistair's choice for CEO? A knot of anxiety began to form in his stomach. This was not going according to his script. "The heir is no distant stranger," Mr. Alistair's voice boomed, pulling Victor from his spiraling thoughts. "This individual has been among us for years, watching, learning, waiting for the right time to claim what is theirs. A person who understands our world, not from a spreadsheet but from the inside. A person of immense strength, patience, and quiet resolve." Victor scanned the faces of the era's most powerful people. Was it one of them? Some European duke he'd never met? A banking scion working under a pseudonym? His confidence began to unravel at the edges, the fine threads of his arrogance coming undone one by one. "This transition of power has been in the works for over a year," Mr. Alistair stated, his voice rising with theatrical gravity. "And tonight, I have the profound and historic honor of stepping down from my position, not just as CEO of Aurelian Vanguard, but as interim chairman of the Global de Montigny Group Board." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. The silence in the room was absolute, a perfect vacuum of anticipation and shock. "It is my great privilege," Mr. Alistair said, his voice ringing with a mix of reverence and triumph as he looked out at the crowd, his eyes seeming to find a specific spot in the shadows, "to introduce you to the new majority shareholder, the heiress to the de Montigny fortune, and the new chairwoman of the entire global enterprise." Victor held his breath, his entire future hanging on the next words. Mr. Alistair smiled, a wide, genuine, almost paternal smile. "Please welcome Ms. Eleanor de Montigny Sterling." The name hit Victor with the physical force of a lightning strike. Eleanor de Montigny Sterling. For a frozen second, the words did not register. They were a random assembly of sounds, an audio system glitch, a cruel joke. He swiveled his head slightly, a frown of disbelief, expecting to see some other, older, more formidable Eleanor step out from backstage. But there was no one else. The name echoed in the deep silence of the atrium. Eleanor de Montigny Sterling, his quiet, bookish, beige wallpaper wife. It was impossible. It was absurd. It was. And then he saw her. She emerged not from the wings of the stage, but from a private corridor beside the hall. A path reserved for guests of honor and royalty. The transformation was so absolute, so breathtaking, it defied belief. Gone was the simple navy blue dress, the sensible shoes, the apologetic posture. The woman who stepped into the soft glow of a follow spot was a queen. She wore a bespoke emerald green silk dress that shimmered like a living thing, its cut severe and elegant. Diamonds, real, spectacular diamonds, blazed at her throat and ears. The legendary de Montigny emeralds, rumored to have been lost for a generation. Her hair, once pinned up in a modest bun, was styled in a polished, powerful chignon that highlighted the aristocratic lines of her face. But it was her expression that shattered Victor's world. The gentle, compliant sweetness was gone, replaced by a cold, unwavering composure. Her eyes, which for years had only reflected his own image, now held a deep, ancient power. She walked with a grace and purpose he had never seen, each step silent and deliberate on the marble. The sound in the room rushed back in, a tidal wave of gasps, frantic whispers, and the explosion of hundreds of camera flashes. Lydia Jones looked like she had seen a ghost, her phone nearly slipping from her trembling hands. Gerald Thompson, the CFO, simply nodded to himself, as if he had finally seen the punchline of a very long, very complicated joke. Ethan Allister's jaw was on the floor. Victor couldn't breathe. His lungs had seized. His blood had turned to ice in his veins. He felt Serafina's hand go limp in his, then slide away completely. He looked at her. The color had drained from her face. Her femme fatale smile was replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. Her eyes flicked between Victor and the majestic figure approaching the stage, the frantic calculations visible on her face. She had boarded a shooting star's wagon. Victor was radioactive, and she was fleeing the exclusion zone. He stood frozen, a statue of hubris in a Tom Ford suit, as his wife, the woman he had discarded as a footnote in his life, prepared to read his eulogy to the entire world. The thunder of her name was still ringing in his ears, and he knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that the storm had only just begun. Part 4. The Execution. Eleanor's voice, when she finally spoke, was not loud, but it filled the cavernous hall with astonishing clarity. It was the same soft voice she had used to ask if he wanted coffee, but it was now imbued with a steely resonance that demanded absolute attention. "Thank you, Mr. Allister," she began, her gaze leaving Victor to address the crowd, "for your stewardship, your friendship, and for keeping my family's legacy safe until I was ready to claim it." She then directed her attention to the assembled guests. "Many of you are surprised to see me here. For 10 years, I have been content to live a quiet life. I believe that to truly understand an empire, one must first understand its people, not from a boardroom, but from the ground up. I have watched this company. I have studied its strengths and identified its weaknesses. And I have learned a great deal about character, about loyalty, and about betrayal." Every word was a perfectly aimed dart, and Victor felt each one pierce his skin. He was suffocating, drowning in the shocked, scornful gazes of the very people he had spent his life trying to impress. He saw Serafina slinking through the crowd, her silver dress a flash of light as she bolted toward the exit, a rat leaving a sinking ship. She didn't even spare him a backward glance. Aurelian Vanguard, and indeed the entire global de Montigny group, is entering a new era, Eleanor continued, her voice gaining strength. An era of integrity, innovation, and strength. We will cull the parts of this organization that have become decadent, dishonest, or disloyal. We will reward talent and vision, but we will no longer tolerate arrogance and duplicity. Our future will be built on a foundation of respect. Effective immediately, the board has approved my proposed restructuring plan. A new wave of murmurs swept the room. She already had a plan. She had the board's approval. This wasn't a recent development. This had been in motion for months, perhaps years. While he was plotting his vulgar little affair and his insignificant ascent, she had been moving armies and redrawing maps. Her speech was brief, powerful, and visionary. She outlined a future for the company that was both exciting and ruthless. She ended by thanking everyone for their attendance and promising a new dawn for the company. The atrium erupted in thunderous applause. It was genuine, fervent applause for the unexpected queen who had just claimed her throne. As the clapping subsided and the lights came up, a swarm of journalists and well-wishers surged toward the stage, all desperate for a word with the new empress of fashion. But Eleanor held up a hand, and 2 large, impeccably dressed men from her security detail materialized, creating a clear path for her as she descended the stairs. She ignored the clamoring reporters, her eyes fixed on one target: Victor. She walked toward him, the crowd parting before her like the Red Sea. The whispers died in her wake. The air crackled with tension. Victor was anchored to the spot, a prisoner awaiting his sentence. She stopped a few feet from him. Up close, her transformation was even more profound. The power she radiated was a palpable force. "Hello, Victor," she said, her voice now a low, private murmur that was more terrifying than any shout. "Eleanor, I don't understand," he stammered, his mind a vortex of confusion and terror. "De Montigny, your family." "My mother was the last direct heiress," she explained calmly, as if discussing the weather. "When she and my father passed, the estate was placed in a trust until I turned 35, or until I felt I was ready to lead. I chose to wait. I wanted to live a normal life. I wanted to see if I could be loved for who I was, not what I owned. I wanted to see what kind of man I had married, when he thought no one of importance was watching." She paused, her eyes locked on his. "And you showed me." The cold, simple truth of it crashed into him. Their entire life together. His whole career had been a test, a long, elaborate, 10-year character assessment, and he had failed in the most spectacular way imaginable. "The promotion you were so sure of," she continued, her voice devoid of emotion. "The COO for North America position. I dissolved it this afternoon. It's a redundant role, a vanity title." He flinched as if she had struck him. "Your shares in the company, which were granted as part of your executive compensation package, are subject to a morality clause, a clause I personally drafted with our legal team 6 months ago. Publicly flaunting an affair while representing the company is, I believe, a flagrant violation. They will be forfeited. Of course, you may contest it in court." A small ghost of a smile touched her lips. "My lawyers are the best in the world." He couldn't speak. His throat was rough, his tongue a lead weight in his mouth. "As for your employment," she said, delivering the final fatal blow, "your services are no longer required at Aurelian Vanguard or any of its subsidiaries. Your access has been revoked. The contents of your office will be messengered to your new address, whatever that may be." She gave a discreet nod. 2 security men moved to flank Victor. "These gentlemen will escort you off the premises," Eleanor said, her tone definitive. "Your presence is no longer welcome." She turned to walk away, her back straight, her emerald dress flowing behind her. "Eleanor, wait!" The desperate cry was wrenched from Victor's throat. She stopped, but did not turn around. "After everything we've been through, after everything, don't I deserve something?" he pleaded, his voice cracking, his entire world reduced to this one pathetic appeal. She paused for a long moment. Then, she turned her head slightly, looking at him over her shoulder. Her expression was not pity, but a strange, remote sadness. The kind of sorrow you feel for a creature that has proven a profound disappointment. "You already had something, Victor." Her voice carried the weight of 10 lost years. "You had everything, and you threw it away for a cheap imitation." With that, she continued walking, disappearing into the crowd of her new subjects, leaving Victor Sterling alone in the ruins of his life, with only his public humiliation and 2 security guards for company. The reckoning was complete. Conclusion: the renaissance of the navy blue dress. If you loved this story of shocking twists and definitive justice, do me a huge favor and smash that like button. Share it with a friend who loves a good revenge story. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel and tap that notification bell. We have many more tales of drama and intrigue coming your way, and you don't want to miss a single one. Thanks for watching. And that is how a quiet, overlooked wife flipped the script on her arrogant husband in the most public way imaginable. It is a story that reminds us that true power is not always loud and flashy. Sometimes it is silent, patient, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Eleanor de Montigny. Sterling didn't just reclaim her life. She reclaimed the empire that was rightfully hers, proving that the greatest strength often comes from being consistently underestimated. She used the pain as fuel, the betrayal as a foundation, and the humiliation as a lesson for the man who thought he could discard her. Her revenge was not about spite. It was about reappropriation. Reappropriating her story, her value, and her destiny. Her happy ending wasn't finding new love. It was finding her own limitless capacity for leadership. The deep question. Eleanor's story teaches us that Victor's biggest mistake wasn't the infidelity, but underestimating the person closest to him. What do you believe is the single biggest mistake powerful people make in their personal relationships? Leave your opinion in the comment box below. The weeks that followed the Vanguard Gala were a brutal education for Victor Sterling. The story was everywhere, an irresistible cocktail of wealth, betrayal, and revenge. He became a pariah overnight. His name was a joke in boardrooms and a cautionary tale at cocktail parties. Stripped of everything, he was forced to move into a soulless corporate apartment, a stark contrast to the penthouse he once called home. He tried to call Serafina Silver once, but her number was disconnected. A week later, he saw a paparazzi photo of her arm in arm with a grizzled 70-something film director. She was a survivor, and he had merely been a stepping stone on her path. Meanwhile, Eleanor de Montigny Sterling was simultaneously on the cover of Forbes, Fortune, and Vogue. The world was fascinated by her story, but even more by her actions. She was no figurehead. She was a force. She moved with a speed and precision that left the industry breathless, systematically eliminating the executives who had thrived on sycophancy and backstabbing, promoting the quiet, brilliant designers and strategists Victor had overlooked. One cool autumn night, months after the gala, Eleanor stood in her new office on the top floor of the Aurelian Vanguard building. It was a vast modern space with a sweeping wall of glass overlooking the glittering expanse of Manhattan. She held a glass of wine, not champagne, and looked out at the city lights. There were moments late at night when a shadow of the past touched her. A ghost ache for the man she thought she had married, the dream of a simple life she had once cherished. But the feeling was fleeting, a cloud passing in front of the sun. The betrayal had been a brutal, painful fire, but it had burned away the illusions, leaving behind something harder, stronger, and far more real. Her chief of staff, Mr. Thayer, the T from her phone, entered the office quietly, holding a tablet. "Madam President, the quarterly projections are in. We are up 17% across all sectors." Eleanor smiled, a genuine, relaxed smile that reached her eyes. "Thank you, Thayer. A good start." "Indeed," he replied. "And one final piece of news. The law firm representing Mr. Sterling has been in contact with our legal team today. He is withdrawing his contest of the share forfeiture. They say he can no longer afford the legal fees." Eleanor simply nodded, taking a slow sip of her wine. There was no triumph in her, no gloating. It was just a loose end tied, a final chapter closing. Victor Sterling was no longer a villain or a ghost in her life. He was merely irrelevant, a faded photograph of a past she had long transcended. She had shed the name Sterling, along with the woman who had carried it. She looked at the endless city, the dawn of her own empire, and felt not the weight of her legacy, but the lightness of her own limitless future. She was free, the open ending, but as the lights of the city reflected in the vast glass wall, a question lingered, silent and sharp, over Eleanor's tranquil composure. The de Montigny Empire was secure. Victor Sterling was ruined. The betrayal was avenged. Yet, a woman who meticulously plans a decade-long performance, who orchestrates a global takeover in silence, and who maintains ice-cold resolve through a husband's infidelity. What does a woman like that truly want next? Was the quiet beige wife truly gone? Or was the quiet, ruthless power we witnessed simply the first layer of a far more intricate, dangerous game? The true mystery of Eleanor de Montigny. Sterling was not what she had, but what she was capable of. She took one final sip of wine, her emerald eyes reflecting the million lights of the city she now owned. A solitary, unreadable figure at the summit. Final interactive question. The chessboard is cleared. Eleanor has won everything. But what do you think is the ultimate hidden goal of a woman who chose to live a normal life for 10 years only to reveal herself as an empress? What is her true endgame? Leave your theories in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button if you were completely shocked by Eleanor's reveal. We'll see you in the next one.